On this week's edition of Connecticut Naturalist, something strange is in these trees. We finally find some wild turkeys. House sparrows warm themselves from the cold on a sunny rooftop. Next, we visit a Neapolitan Crach in Gaylordsville, Connecticut at day and night. All the vignettes are life-sized and were handmade by an artist. Then, we attend a wind over wings demonstration in Newtown. 4 birds were presented. We have more trivia with Connecticut Naturalist reporter Azizi Kayama. Then we're off to the Shepaug Dam to observe wintering bald eagles. All this and more on this week's edition of Connecticut Naturalist. And now here's your host.
Hello friends, I'm Will Michael and you're watching the Connecticut Naturalist. It's been extremely cold this week. Luckily, I was out filming last week before this Arctic air settled over Connecticut. I acquired some good footage. The footage that you're about to see is the most strange thing I've ever filmed in the forest. So stay tuned and here it comes. Occasionally, you stumble upon extreme oddities when you're in the forest. In the branches of this ironwood tree, about 8 feet up, a mouse had climbed and is now stuck between 2 branches.
In the branch of this ironwood tree, about 8 feet high, a most unusual event occurred. A mouse climbed this tree for some unknown reason, possibly in search of food or to avoid a predator. The mouse unfortunately got stuck between these 2 branches and must have suffered a heart attack. This mouse is dead. It is now stuck in the tree and is frozen in the cold weather. This is the strangest finding I have yet to encounter. The chances of finding this mouse were slim to none. Here's a wide shot of the path where the mouse is located. It was incredible to discover this tiny mouse in this large area of woodland. Returning from the mouse tree, the sunlight shining on this patch of wild raspberries is beautiful. The hairs on the stem are catching the sunlight and are glowing red in the winter landscape.
That mouse teaches us to be observant while in the woods. You never know what you might find. You may remember from last week, I was tracking some wild turkeys. While out driving before the snow came in, I found a flock and pulled the car over to the side of the road and pulled out the camera.
Last week, I was on the tracks of some wild turkeys. This is a large flock found at Francis Clark Industrial Park in Bethel. Turkeys are now common in Connecticut. Previously, their numbers were low, but now they are stable. It's a study in the food web. As turkey numbers rise, other animals return to Connecticut, such as the coyote. Now that we're on the topic of birds, here's footage of some house sparrows that were warming themselves on my rooftop. On this day, the temperature was around 20 degrees. The birds used the black rooftop and sunlight as a way to warm up from the cold. House sparrows were imported from Europe, and their numbers are overwhelming in Connecticut. This is a male house sparrow. Males can be distinguished from females by the presence of dark brown feathers on the wing, tail, and nape. The female is lighter brown. The male has a black beak, while the female's beak is again light brown. The melting snow serves as a water source for the sparrows. We have many native species of sparrows, but they are less common, and the house sparrows are pushing them out. You can tell it's cold by the way the birds are fluffing out their feathers. They do this to create more space to hold warm air.
We'll now take a look at a Neapolitan Crach in Gaylordsville, Connecticut. Dal Alcesser is the artist behind this crèche, and the figures that you're about to see are all life-size and handmade by her. So let's take a look at the footage I acquired last weekend. What material do you make these figures out of?
Well, basically it's a very simple construction of a wooden frame of a stick figure. And over the frame I put chicken wire, and I kind of mold the figure by the chicken wire. And then I add the faces and the hands, which are the actual plaster face masks of the people. And when the faces and hands are attached, then I dip the material in house paint, and then that is added to the figure, so that the material is permeated with paint so that it becomes somewhat waterproof.
And how many years have you been putting these on display?
Let me see, well, we started in 1992, so this is the 11th year. We had several figures in front of the house for a couple of years, but then I started this large Neapolitan Crach in 1992. So some of them have been out here for 11 seasons. And depending on the winters, as you all know, last winter was very, very hard. They've been stuck in the snow till almost March. So we're hoping to get them out early this year.
And how many figures do you have this year on display?
Well, I'm not sure. People keep asking me. I haven't counted. Someone counted for me the other day and said there are 60 out here. I've lost a few along the way. I had a camel, and the camel collapsed after being out several winters. And I haven't redone the camel yet. Hopefully he'll be back next year. But I think there are about 60 figures all told, somewhere in that number.
Now the faces of these figures look so lifelike. How do you get them so accurate?
That's because they are the actual face masks that are made with what's called rigid wrap. It's a material of a very gauze-like material immersed in a plaster, and then you wet it just as if you were doing a cast, a leg cast, that type of thing. It's that same principle, and then that is applied to the individual's face. So you see, they are very individual. They're big noses, little noses, big chins, or whatever. So they take on their own character because their faces are the actual face masks of living people.
And how long during the holiday season, the Christmas season, do you have this open to the public?
Well, we put it up, which takes about 10 to 15 people. I want everybody to know that it's a real effort on a lot of people to get this thing together. And we put it up the weekend after Thanksgiving, and then the following weekend, which is the first weekend of December, is when we officially light it. And then we usually take it down right after New Year's. I'd just like to say, too, well, these figures are life-size, but are based on the 17 or 18-inch figures that are found at the Metropolitan Museum of Art under the large tree in the medieval room at Christmas time. They are the traditional Neapolitan Crach figures that were made by the sculptors around Naples in the 1700s. And they were dressed in the fashions of the day, and the faces were the sculptured faces of the people in the villages and so forth. And that's what gave me my inspiration to do this, but on a larger scale, and have the actual faces of my family, my friends, and the people who have been good to me in my life. Maintenance is probably my biggest job every year, especially last year when they were in the ground. You can see that they're all on bases, and that's what happens is that the bases get frozen to the ground and we can't get the figures out, especially if there's, a foot of snow like we had last year. So maintaining them was a big job this year. I had to repaint every one of them, and because the hands and the faces are plaster cast, they crack very easily, and there really are quite a few figures that need to be redone out here. They've been here for many years. And because they are on chicken wire, they're very, very light. They give the illusion of some weight to them, even the elephant, but they're extremely light and they flip over very easily. And last year, when they were here in February and into March, the winds broke, their frozen bases were frozen in, and the wind literally just snapped them off the bases. So many of these figures have been flipped numerous times. I've learned to stake them, 3 and 4 times. Every figure has maybe 4 stakes to hold it down, but still, they flip over very easily.
Do you make a new figure each year?
I try to do at least one figure. This year, because it took so long to repair them, I made one new figure, and that is the Franciscan monk that's over in the archway with the red chalice. And he is our pastor up at Sacred Heart in Kent, Father Bergerick. I also made several sheep. I need to do animals. I'm hoping to do some animals next year. Concentrate on that. Maybe add 1 or 2 figures if I can. You'll notice that most of the figures, people ask me, why are the figures gray? I've left most of the figures gray except for the Holy Family, and I distinguish them by making them white. But I thought leaving them gray would give them more of a sculptural appearance, and you could concentrate more on what the figure was doing, whether it was walking or gesturing in some way. So that becomes more apparent when there's no color. Color doesn't take away from the gesture and your concentration on the gesture. I also added a few touches of red here and there to kind of break up the gray and the white.
And are we actually located in Kent or Gaylordsville?
We are located in Gaylordsville, on Gaylord Road.
Maybe you could fill us in on that George Washington oak.
I can't anymore.
What happened to it?
It's gone. It wasn't in very good shape and had been, pinned and wired. And, we had some very big rainstorms that took its toll on it. Yeah, unfortunately.
And the historical
significance of this?
Yeah, the tree. I've heard different stories. Did George Washington give a speech there, or
he supposedly met with his troops under that tree. Maybe he met Lafayette under the tree.
Well, thanks very much for allowing us to film this display, this Cretch, for the show.
Well, you're welcome, Will.
I'd like to thank Dal Alcesser for her time and for allowing me to film her display. Now stay tuned for a Connecticut Naturalist trivia question with Azizi Kayama.
Hello friends, I'm Azizi Kayama with this week's trivia question. I'm going to test your memory skills today by asking you, can you identify the insect that made this shell? We talked about this insect on a past episode. This shell is made by the larva of a certain insect. The larva lies underwater and can be found in ponds, streams, and rivers throughout Connecticut. Stay tuned and I'll be right back with the answer.
Oh, you're back already. I was walking around in circles trying to stay warm. While we're waiting for the answer to the trivia question, we'll take a look at the highlights of a Wind Over Wings demonstration that occurred in Newtown, Connecticut. Wind Over Wings is a bird rehabilitation organization. Their center is in Clinton, Connecticut. They brought 4 birds to the Sierra Club meeting in Newtown, so here's a look.
The first bird on presentation is Circe, an eastern screech owl. Many of the birds that Wind Over Wings rehabilitate have gone through an accident and can no longer survive on their own in the wild. This screech owl was hit by a car and suffered neurological damage. She is deaf in her left ear and can no longer hunt. Hearing is extremely important to owls because they use their ears to locate and zero in on prey. Owls depend more on their hearing than even their eyesight. One of her ear tufts is also damaged, but the tuft is not actually the ear. The ear is located under the feathers on the side of the head. Hope Douglas demonstrates a recording of the screech owl's call.
Sounds like a horse, but in the night, if you heard that at night.
Screech owl color patterns range from gray to brown to a rusty red color. Our next bird is Sedgwick, an American kestrel. This kestrel lived in a barn as a youngster and got his leg caught in between 2 planks. The more he struggled, the more his leg got wedged. Someone heard his cries and rescued him. He was taken to a vet and his life was saved, but his left leg had to be amputated. Next we have Lady Red, a red-tailed hawk. She is 28 years old and is blind in her left eye. When Lady Red was a youngster, she was hunting and flew over a field. She came down on her prey, possibly a rat, but the rat fought back and blinded her in her left eye. She was found by a man who could have helped but didn't. Instead, he took her and kept her in his cellar for 19 years. The state found out about it and confiscated Lady Red and brought her to Wind Over Wings. The man was given a jail sentence. Hope Douglas tells us that she wanted to see if Lady Red had been trained to step up onto a glove. Lady Red attacked the glove with such force that her talons went right through it. The glove is lined with Kevlar, the same material used in bulletproof vests. This shows you the strength of her talons. Lady Red is stooped over because she was kept in a tiny cage for 19 years. She can no longer soar, and her tail feathers are missing because she spends most of her time on the ground rather than perching. Finally, Hope Douglas presents Oliver, the turkey vulture. When Oliver was newly hatched, he was about the size of this stuffed animal. A mother and son found him in a barn alone, while his mother was out getting food. They thought he was abandoned and mistakenly brought him home. Oliver imprinted to people and can no longer be released into the wild. He sees all people as his brothers and sisters. Turkey vultures have amazing abilities to clean spoiled meat and dead carcasses. They can digest spoiled meat contaminated with salmonella or botulism and neutralize it.
I'd like to thank Hope Douglas and her team for appearing on my show. Now stay tuned for the answer to the trivia question.
Hi, I'm back with your answer. The larva of the caddisfly makes the shell. The caddisfly larva gathers small plant or sand particles and makes the shell as a source of protection and camouflage. When they change into adults, they leave the shell behind. So next time when you're looking in the water, take a closer look at the rocks you see. You may discover that the tiny rocks you're seeing are a caddisfly shell. I'm Azizi Kayama, and this is your trivia for the week. I'll see you soon.
We interrupt this program for a Connecticut Naturalist news flash. Vic the Vulture and the Mad Frogger were recently spotted on ice skates at Mountain Pond. The two musicians are on break from their busy tour schedule. They and their other band members spent the day out in the fresh air. Vic said, "It's a good break from all the screaming, autograph-hungry fans, to be out skating carefree on the ice. It relaxes your mind. Flying from forest to forest to perform takes its toll after a while. Being a bird, I don't often get the chance to skate, so with this cold weather, I seized the opportunity." Vic and the Mad Frogger encourage all their fans to go out and enjoy the winter weather.
It's always wise to carry a spare candle with you when you're out in freezing temperatures. The heat from this small candle alone could save your life. Anyway, again before the snow came in, I was at the Shepaug Dam viewing eagles. At this time of year, bald eagles are wintering over. A scientist from Northeast Utilities fills us in on what's happening at Shepaug. We have here wildlife biologist for Northeast Utilities, Amy Pardee. She's going to explain what's going on here at the Shepaug Dam.
Well, this is the Shepaug hydroelectric facility. As he said, this is a Northeast Utilities facility. It is the largest hydroelectric facility in the state of Connecticut, and it's kind of unique in that it creates wonderful habitat for wintering bald eagles. It's very wooded around here, creates nice areas for the birds to feel secure, that they're not going to be near a lot of people, they're not going to be experiencing stress. It also keeps the water open all during the season so that it provides a very nice area for the eagles to fish. Fish is their primary food source, and they're looking for an easy food source during the winter to ensure their survival through the season. Shepaug opens up at the end of December, and we usually are open until mid-March. That's about when the eagles are here in the state of Connecticut. And the birds come down from the north. They come down from Maine, the Maritime provinces, other states, Massachusetts, New York State, and they settle in here for the winter. We're open here for the public to come and see the birds on Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays from 9 to 1. We do operate by reservation only, the reason being that we like to control the number of people that are in here seeing the birds. We want to keep their stress level down to a minimum so that these birds can go back to their regular habitat during the spring and successfully reproduce with as little stress as possible.
At the Shepaug Dam, a bird viewing station overlooks the water. The bald eagles hunt for fish near the dam. Telescopes are provided to view the eagles. I saw 4 bald eagles on the day I was there. They were slightly out of camera range, so I'm running this footage of an eagle that I acquired from a different location in the past. Bald eagles just like this one can be seen at the Shepaug Dam. Juvenile bald eagles do not have white plumage on their heads. Juveniles are mostly dark brown. With each molt, they gain more white. After 4 to 5 years, they reach full adult plumage.
I'll revisit the Shepaug Dam sometime in the future. Hopefully, I'll be able to capture some bald eagles on film from that specific location. Now, since I'm sitting here with my candle and matches, I'd like to use this opportunity to share with you some information that you may find helpful regarding matches when you're out in the woods in the cold. I have 4 matches left in my book, but say I was down to only 1, and it was vital for my survival to get a fire going with 1 match. A trick that you can do to make 1 match into 2 is to go down to the end and split the match. Now comes the tricky part. Be careful when you get to the head of the match and break off evenly the end. Now that 1 match has become 2. Each one can start a fire. So now you have 2 chances to get that log burning. My candle just blew out. Lucky for me, we've come to the end of this week's episode. In case you tuned in late and don't know my identity, I'm Will Michael, and you've been watching the Connecticut Naturalist. Now stay tuned for an animal music video. This week's song is entitled Cold Being a Toad. As you know, toads hate the winter weather. I hope you enjoy.
The wind is growing cold, Phragmites stems are dry, winter chaps my lips, the sun's low in the sky, I'm feeling great tonight, frost is in my eyes. On a stone alone, November's not for me, I should dig a hole, sleep until the spring, chilly mud on feet, send shivers up my spine. Nobody wants to touch a toad, for fear that warts will spread to hands. Do not believe superstitions, I'm not a thing, I have a name. Leonard the Toad. I could hop around till midnight alone. It's cold being a toad. My throat is getting hoarse, impossible to trill. I've no reason to hum, memories are dust. If I were a thief, I'd steal a Luna moth and sing. My story is so sad, it's not like me at all. I'm a happy little toad, but not in the fall. Mayflowers, where are you? December is too long. In all your fairy tales of old, the glory goes always to frogs. I'm left to play second fiddle, but don't forget I have a name. Leonard the Toad. I could hop around till midnight